The cold was a living thing. It seeped through the worn soles of Alara's boots and crept up her legs, a merciless predator hunting for warmth. It bit at her cheeks, leaving them numb and raw, and turned the condensation of her breath into a fleeting white ghost in the city's indifferent air. Every gust of wind that funneled between the towering glass and steel buildings felt like a personal assault, a reminder of her own fragility in the face of the world's hard edges. The city glittered around her, a constellation of festive lights that promised joy and comfort to everyone but her. Her daughter, Lily, held her hand tightly, a small, warm anchor in the icy expanse of the evening. At 6 years old, Lily's world was still painted in the vibrant colors of hope, colors that Alara fought desperately to keep from fading into the muted grays of their reality. Lily's gaze was fixed on a department store window, her small face pressed against the cold glass, leaving a perfect, steamy oval. Her eyes, wide with a wonder that both warmed and broke Alara's heart, were locked on a single object inside. It was not the most extravagant toy, not the dollhouse with miniature furniture or the gleaming red bicycle. It was a simple snow globe, no bigger than Lily's 2 small fists put together. Inside the glass sphere, a tiny, solitary cabin sat nestled among frosted pine trees. A miniature deer, frozen in a moment of gentle grace, stood near its door. With a gentle shake, a blizzard of iridescent glitter would swirl around the peaceful scene, catching the light and creating a universe of swirling stars. To Lily, it was not just a toy, it was a promise of a warm, safe home, of quiet and peace. It was a world she could hold in her hands, a world where the snow was always beautiful and never biting, where the cold was magical and not a threat. She had been talking about it for weeks, ever since they first saw it on one of their long walks home from the shelter's soup kitchen. "Look, Mommy," she had whispered then, her voice filled with reverence. "It's a forever house. It's always Christmas in there." Alara's heart clenched at the memory. A forever house. They had not had one of those in a very long time. Their current reality was a single drafty room at the back of a crumbling boarding house, a place where the scent of damp and despair clung to the walls. The rent was due in 3 days, and Alara had no idea how she was going to pay it. Her job cleaning offices at night barely covered the cost of food, and even that was a constant, precarious struggle. She felt the familiar weight of exhaustion settle deep into her bones. It was more than just physical tiredness from long hours and little sleep. It was a soul-deep weariness, the kind that comes from carrying too much worry for too long. Every day was a battle, a series of small, desperate calculations. Could she stretch the last of the bread for another day? Was it cold? Enough to justify turning on the rattling, expensive heater for just an hour. But looking at Lily, at the pure, unfiltered joy on her daughter's face as she stared at the snow globe, Alara felt a surge of fierce determination. She would not let this world extinguish her daughter's light. Not yet. Not while she still had breath in her body. She reached into the pocket of her thin coat, her fingers fumbling with the cold. They closed around the single, crinkled $10 bill she had tucked away. It was the last of her money. It was meant for a loaf of bread, a carton of milk, and maybe, if she was lucky, a small bag of potatoes to get them through the next 2 days. It was survival money, but as she looked at the price tag on the snow globe, a small, elegant $9.99, she knew what she had to do. For one night, she wanted to give Lily not what she needed, but what she wanted. She wanted to give her a piece of magic. The decision felt both reckless and absolutely necessary. It was a small rebellion against the crushing weight of their circumstances, a single act of love that defied logic and practicality. She took a deep breath, the frigid air stinging her lungs, and squeezed Lily's hand. "Do you really love it, sweetheart?" she asked, her voice soft. Lily turned to her, her eyes shining like newly minted coins. "Oh, yes, Mommy, more than anything. It's the most beautiful thing in the whole world." That was it. That was all Alara needed to hear. The bread could wait, the milk could wait, survival could wait. For this one moment, magic would have to be enough. She was about to steer Lily toward the store's entrance, her heart thumping with a strange mix of terror and elation, when a sound from a nearby bus stop caught her attention. It was a soft, pained groan, followed by a series of ragged coughs that echoed in the cold air. Alara's gaze shifted from the brightly lit window to the shadowed bus shelter. An old man was huddled on the bench, his body trembling violently. He was wearing a coat that looked as thin and worn as her own, and his face, etched with deep lines of hardship, was pale and drawn. His hands, gnarled with age, were blue with cold as he clutched a flimsy, crumpled bus schedule. Alara hesitated. Her focus had been so narrow, so centered on Lily and the snow globe, that the rest of the world had faded away. Now it came rushing back in, cold and demanding. She saw the man's desperation, a mirror of her own, but older, more fragile. He looked up, his weary eyes meeting hers for a brief second, and in them she saw a profound and utter defeat. Lily tugged on her hand, trying to pull her toward the store. "Mommy, come on, before it closes." But Alara couldn't move. She was rooted to the spot, caught in a silent, agonizing conflict. In one direction lay her daughter's dream, a small, perfect sphere of happiness that cost $10. In the other direction sat a stranger's, suffering, a man who looked like he was one cold night away from disappearing completely. The $10 bill in her pocket suddenly felt impossibly heavy, the weight of two different worlds resting on its fragile paper. Her mind raced, a frantic torrent of justifications and doubts. Lily deserved this one nice thing. She had been so good, so patient, never complaining about their meager meals or their cold room. This snow globe was more than a toy. It was a symbol that her mother could still provide moments of joy, that their life was not entirely defined by lack. To take that away from her now when they were so close felt like a cruelty she couldn't bear. But then her eyes fell back on the old man. He was trying to stand, his legs shaking so badly he had to grip the side of the shelter to keep from falling. The bus was approaching, its lights cutting through the darkness, the hiss of its air brakes a final, urgent call. He fumbled in his pockets, his movements clumsy with cold, and came up with nothing. A look of pure, unadulterated panic crossed his face. He was going to miss the last bus. He was going to be stranded out here in the killing cold. How could she choose? How could she weigh her daughter's fleeting happiness against this man's immediate, life-altering need? It was an impossible moral equation. The warmth of the department store, the sparkling promise of the snow globe, the light in Lily's eyes, it all pulled at her with an incredible force. But the image of the old man, shivering and alone, pulled at her conscience with an even greater one. She saw her own father in his face, gone for so many years now. She saw the quiet dignity he had maintained, even when times were tough. She saw the kindness he had always shown to strangers, a lesson he had tried to instill in her. "Kindness costs nothing, Alara," he used to say. But he was wrong. Right now it cost everything. It cost the one thing she had left to give. "Mommy?" Lily's voice was small, laced with confusion. "What's wrong?" Alara looked down at her daughter. She knelt, bringing herself to eye level with the small, questioning face. She had to make Lily understand, but how could a 6-year-old comprehend such a choice? "Sweetheart," she began, her voice thick with emotion, "do you see that man over there?" She pointed toward the bus stop. Lily followed her finger, her brow furrowing. "He looks cold, Mommy. He is, baby, he's very cold, and I think he needs our help." The internal battle raged within her. It was a war between a mother's love and a human's compassion. For a moment she allowed herself to be selfish. She imagined walking into the store, the bell above the door jingling merrily. She pictured the warmth washing over them, the smell of cinnamon and pine. She saw herself handing the cashier her last $10 and receiving the precious snow globe in a crisp paper bag. She could feel the weight of it in her hand, the joy it would bring. She could almost see Lily's smile, but the vision was shattered by the sound of the bus doors opening with a pneumatic sigh. The old man made a weak gesture toward the driver, a silent plea, and the driver just shook his head, impatient. The rules were the rules. No fare, no ride. The man's shoulders slumped in defeat. The doors began to close. In that instant, the choice was made. It was not a choice made with her head, but with a deeper, more instinctual part of her being. She could not walk away. She could not buy a symbol of a warm, safe home while leaving a fellow human being to freeze on the street. It would make the snow globe a lie, a hollow, glittering mockery of the very values she wanted to teach her daughter. She stood up quickly, pulling the $10 bill from her pocket. The paper felt warm from her body, a stark contrast to the frigid air. She turned to Lily, her heart aching with the apology she knew she would have to make later. "Wait right here for 1 second, sweetheart. Don't move." Before Lily could protest, Alara hurried across the few feet of pavement that separated her from the bus stop. She reached the old man just as the bus began to pull away from the curb. "Wait!" she called out, her voice stronger than she expected. "Please wait!" She ran alongside the bus for a few steps, banging on the door. Miraculously, the driver saw her and, with an annoyed grunt, brought the vehicle to a halt. The doors hissed open again. Alara didn't look at the driver. She turned to the old man, who was staring at her with a mixture of shock and confusion. She pressed the $10 bill into his trembling, icy hand. His skin felt like fragile parchment. "Here," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "You need this more than I do. Please, get on the bus. Get home where it's warm." The old man looked down at the money in his palm, then back up at her. Tears welled in his tired eyes, freezing almost instantly on his wrinkled cheeks. He tried to speak, but only a choked whisper came out. I can't." "Yes, you can," Alara insisted. "Go on, there's no time." She gently pushed him toward the steps of the bus. He stumbled forward, still looking back at her as if she were an apparition. He handed the money to the driver, who took it without comment, and then he slowly, painfully, made his way to an empty seat. Through the window, his eyes found hers again. He placed a hand over his heart in a gesture of profound gratitude. Alara simply nodded, a small, sad smile on her face. As the bus pulled away, disappearing into the river of taillights, a strange and unexpected feeling washed over her. The anxiety that had been her constant companion, the tight knot of worry in her stomach, suddenly dissolved. Her pocket was empty. Her prospects for the next few days were even bleaker than before. She would have to go back to her daughter and explain why the magical snow globe could not be hers. And yet she felt a sense of peace, a quiet, unshakable certainty that she had done the right thing. It was a warmth that came not from a heater or a thick coat, but from deep within, a small, resilient flame of human decency that the world had not yet managed to extinguish. She turned back to Lily, bracing herself for the tears and disappointment. Her daughter was standing right where she had left her, a tiny, solitary figure in the glow of the store window. But she wasn't crying. She was watching Alara with an expression of quiet awe. "You gave him our money, Mommy," Lily said, not as an accusation but as a simple statement of fact. Alara's heart ached. "I did, sweetheart. I'm so sorry about the snow globe. That man, he needed to get home. He was so cold." Lily looked from Alara's face to the now empty spot on the bench where the man had been. Then she looked back at the snow globe in the window, its tiny cabin glittering under the store lights. After a long moment, she reached out and took Ilara's hand. "It's okay, Mommy," she said, her small voice filled with a wisdom far beyond her years. "A real home is more important than a toy one." Ilara felt a rush of love and pride, so powerful it brought tears to her eyes. She swept her daughter into a fierce hug, burying her face in Lily's soft, woolly hat. In that moment, holding her child, she felt richer than she had in years. They had nothing, and yet they had everything that truly mattered. As they stood there, wrapped in their own small circle of warmth, the quiet of the moment was broken by the purr of a powerful engine. A long black car, sleek and silent as a panther, pulled up to the curb beside them. It was a vehicle of such opulent luxury that it seemed to belong to another dimension, a world of effortless wealth and comfort that was utterly alien to theirs. The tinted rear window glided down with a soft hum. A man sat in the back, his face partially obscured by shadows. He was impeccably dressed in a dark, tailored suit, and he exuded an aura of calm authority. He leaned forward slightly, his gaze falling on Ilara and Lily. "Excuse me," he said, his voice deep and smooth. "I'm looking for someone, an elderly gentleman who was just at this bus stop." Ilara felt a prickle of alarm. She instinctively pulled Lily closer. "He just left," she said cautiously. "He got on the bus a few minutes ago." The man in the car nodded slowly, his eyes thoughtful. He seemed to be studying her, not in a threatening way, but with a kind of quiet intensity. Beside him, another figure stirred. It was the old man from the bus stop. He had not gone home after all. He had gotten off at the very next stop, where this car had been waiting for him. The old man, Arthur, leaned forward so Ilara could see him. His face was no longer pale with cold, but flushed with warmth from the car's heater. The look of desperation was gone, replaced by one of gentle concern. "My dear," he said, his voice raspy but clear, "I had to come back. I had to thank you properly." The man in the suit, Julian, watched the exchange, his expression unreadable. He had been circling the block for 10 minutes, growing increasingly worried. Arthur was supposed to have been at the gallery an hour ago. He was more than a chauffeur and a groundskeeper. Arthur had been the one constant, stable presence in Julian's life since his mother had passed away. He had been a father to him in all the ways that mattered, a moral compass in a world that often seemed to have none. Finding him shivering at a bus stop, looking so frail, had sent a jolt of fear through Julian's carefully controlled world. When he had finally gotten Arthur into the warm car, the old man had been emotional, telling him a story that to Julian sounded like something out of a fable. A woman with nothing, a single mother with her child, giving away her last $10 so he could get home. Julian, a man who dealt in numbers, in acquisitions and mergers, in a world where every action had a calculated motive, found the concept of such pure, unprompted altruism difficult to process. It was a quality he had not encountered in a very long time. He had insisted on coming back. He needed to see this woman for himself. And now, here she was, standing in the cold, her coat too thin, her face etched with a weariness that he recognized, for it mirrored a different kind of weariness he often felt himself. But in her eyes there was a light, a strength that his own wealth could not buy. And he saw the way she held her daughter, a protective, fierce love that was palpable. "It was nothing," Ilara said to Arthur, feeling flustered under the intense gaze of the two men. "I'm just glad you're all right." Julian spoke again, his voice softer this time. "It was not nothing. My name is Julian Croft. This is Arthur Penshurst. He works for me. He means a great deal to me." He paused, his eyes flicking to the department store window, to the snow globe that Lily was still wistfully admiring. "He told me what you did. You gave him your last $10. Alara shifted uncomfortably. She didn't want their charity or their pity. He needed it, she said simply, as if that explained everything. "Where do you live?" Julian asked, his tone direct but not unkind. "It's freezing out here. The least we can do is give you and your daughter a ride home." The offer was tempting. The thought of sinking into the plush leather seats, of being enveloped in warmth for the 10-block walk home, was almost intoxicating. But her pride, a stubborn, resilient thing, wouldn't allow it. They were strangers, powerful, wealthy strangers. Accepting a ride felt like accepting a handout, like admitting defeat. "Thank you, but we're fine," she said, her voice polite but firm. "We don't live far." She took Lily's hand, ready to walk away. Her refusal seemed to surprise Julian. He was a man accustomed to having his offers and his orders accepted without question, but instead of annoyance, a look of respect flickered in his eyes. He saw her dignity, the quiet strength that had allowed her to perform an act of profound kindness and then expect nothing in return. It intrigued him more than any business deal ever had. "Please," Arthur interjected, his voice pleading, "at least let us do this one small thing. My boy is right. It's no night for a little one to be out walking." Alara looked at Lily, whose small face was beginning to look pinched with cold again. Her daughter's well-being had to come before her own pride. She hesitated for a moment longer, then gave a small, reluctant nod. "All right, thank you." Julian got out of the car to open the door for them, and Alara was struck by his presence. He was tall and carried himself with an easy grace, but there was a sadness in his eyes, a hint of a past sorrow that his expensive suit could not quite conceal. As he helped Lily into the car, his hand briefly brushed Alara's, and a jolt of unexpected warmth shot up her arm. The inside of the car was like another world. The air was warm and smelled faintly of leather and something clean and masculine. The silence was absolute, the sounds of the city completely shut out. Lily sank into the soft seat, her eyes wide with amazement. Alara gave Julian their address, her voice barely a whisper, feeling acutely aware of her worn coat and the scuffs on her boots in this pristine environment. The ride was short and mostly silent. Arthur asked Lily about school, and she chattered happily about her teacher and her friends, her earlier disappointment about the snow globe seemingly forgotten in the excitement of riding in such a fancy car. Julian drove, his eyes on the road, but Alara could feel him listening, occasionally glancing at them in the rearview mirror. When they pulled up in front of her dilapidated boarding house, the contrast between the gleaming Bentley and the crumbling building was almost comical. For a moment, Alara felt a hot flush of shame. This was her life, laid bare for these wealthy strangers to see. But then she remembered the peace she had felt after helping Arthur, and the pride she had felt in Lily's understanding. She had nothing to be ashamed of. She helped Lily out of the car and turned to thank them. "Thank you for the ride. It was very kind of you." Julian got out of the car and stood before her. The streetlights cast long shadows, but she could see his face clearly now. He was handsome, but it was the gravity in his expression, the intelligence in his dark eyes that held her attention. "Miss," he started, then paused. "I'm sorry, I don't know your name." Alara Vance." "Alara," he repeated, the name sounding foreign and elegant on his tongue. "What you did tonight, it was remarkable. Arthur told me you were looking at something in the store window with your daughter. He said he felt he was taking something meant for her." Alara shook her head. "It was just a toy. He needed to get home. It's not a debt that needs repaying." "Perhaps not," Julian said slowly, "but kindness like that should not go unnoticed." He reached into his jacket, and for a heart-stopping moment, Alara thought he was going to offer her money. Her body tensed, ready to refuse. Instead, he pulled out a simple, elegant business card. I run a charitable foundation, he said, handing her the card. The Croft Foundation. We work with underprivileged families in the city. We provide resources, support, counseling. We're currently looking to hire an outreach coordinator, someone to be a direct point of contact for the people we serve, someone with empathy, someone who understands their struggles. He looked at her directly, his gaze unwavering. Someone like you. The job comes with a good salary, benefits, and assistance with housing. I believe you would be perfect for it. Alara stared at the card in her hand, the embossed letters feeling heavy and unreal. Her mind struggled to comprehend what he was saying. A job, a real job, with a salary and benefits, housing. It sounded like a fantasy, a dream she might have on a particularly hopeful night, only to wake up to the cold, hard reality of her life. I don't have a degree, she stammered, the words tumbling out. I haven't worked in an office before. I've only ever done cleaning, waitressing. I'm not interested in your resume, Julian said, his voice cutting through her disbelief. I'm interested in your character. I can teach someone how to use a computer and file paperwork. I can't teach them how to have a heart. I saw all I needed to see tonight. He glanced down at Lily, who was now leaning sleepily against Alara's leg. The office is at the address on that card. Please come by tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock. We can talk more then. It's a real offer, Alara. Before she could find the words to respond, he gave her a small, almost imperceptible nod, got back into his car, and drove away, leaving her standing on the broken pavement, clutching a small piece of cardboard that might just be the key to a whole new life. That night, Alara barely slept. She sat by the window in their small, cold room, long after Lily had fallen into a deep, peaceful sleep. She held the business card in her hand, running her thumb over the raised lettering again and again. It didn't feel real. Men like Julian Croft did not just appear out of the night and offer fairy tale solutions. Life was harder than that. It was crueler. She was half convinced that if she went to that address in the morning, she would find an empty lot or a building where no one had ever heard of the Croft Foundation. And yet, there was a sincerity in his eyes, a seriousness in his tone that she couldn't dismiss. And there was Arthur, the kind-faced old man whose simple need had set this entire, unbelievable chain of events in motion. Was it possible? Could one small act of kindness truly change the entire trajectory of her life? The hope was so bright it was painful, a stark contrast to the darkness of the room and the despair she had felt just hours before. The next morning she dressed in her best, which wasn't much, a pair of dark slacks that were slightly frayed at the hem, and a pale blue sweater that had a small, carefully mended hole near the collar. She brushed her hair until it shone and looked at her reflection in the cracked mirror. The same tired face looked back at her, but today there was a flicker of something new in her eyes. It was not quite hope, but the possibility of it. She dropped Lily off at the small state-funded daycare she attended, promising to be back early. Then, with her heart pounding in her chest, she took the bus to the address on the card. It was a sleek, modern glass building in the heart of the financial district, a world away from her own neighborhood. She felt small and out of place as she walked into the marble lobby. When she gave her name to the receptionist, she was met not with confusion, but with a warm smile. "Yes, Miss Vance? Mr. Croft is expecting you, 25th floor." The elevator ride was silent and swift, lifting her high above the city. The doors opened onto a quiet, beautifully appointed office. Julian was there to greet her, dressed more casually today in a dark sweater and slacks. He looked less intimidating without the suit and the armor of his luxury car. He led her to a comfortable office with a large window that offered a breathtaking view of the city below. Arthur was there too, sitting in a chair by the window, and he gave her a warm, encouraging smile. Julian didn't waste time with small talk. He explained the foundation's mission, his passion for the work evident in his voice. He spoke of his mother, who had started the foundation before she passed away, and his desire to honor her legacy. He described the outreach coordinator role in detail, and as he spoke, Alara realized he was right. It was a job she could do. It was a job she would love. It was everything she had ever wanted, a chance to help people, to make a difference, to use her own experiences with hardship, to ease the burden of others. The salary is more than fair, he concluded, naming a figure that made Alara's head spin. And we have a number of corporate apartments nearby that we make available to our employees. We could have you and your daughter moved into a furnished 2-bedroom place by the end of the week. Tears welled in Alara's eyes, tears of shock and overwhelming gratitude. She tried to speak, to thank him, but the words wouldn't come. All she could do was nod, a wave of relief so powerful it almost buckled her knees. Julian seemed to understand. He pushed a box of tissues gently across the desk toward her. "The job is yours if you want it, Alara." "Yes," she finally whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "Yes, I want it. Thank you." The days that followed were a whirlwind. True to his word, by the end of the week, Alara and Lily were moving out of their single gloomy room and into a bright, clean apartment in a safe, quiet building. It had warm carpets, a real kitchen with a full-sized refrigerator, and a separate bedroom for Lily, painted a cheerful yellow. When Lily saw her new room for the first time, she ran in and did a joyful spin, her laughter echoing through the empty space. Alara started her new job the following Monday. She was a quick learner, and her innate empathy made her a natural at connecting with the families who came to the foundation for help. She listened to their stories with a patience and understanding that no amount of professional training could teach. She saw their struggles as her own, and she fought for them with a quiet tenacity that impressed everyone, most of all Julian. He became a regular presence in her new life. At first, it was strictly professional. He would stop by her desk to ask how a particular case was progressing, or to offer guidance on a difficult situation. But gradually, the conversations began to shift. He started asking about her day, about Lily. He would bring her a coffee in the morning, or insist she leave on time, reminding her that her daughter would be waiting. One evening, as she was packing up to leave, he found her staring out the window at the city lights. "They look different from up here," she said quietly. "How so?" he asked, coming to stand beside her. "Down there," she said, gesturing vaguely toward the streets below. "They always felt mocking, like a party I wasn't invited to. But from up here, they're just beautiful. They look like possibilities." He was silent for a long moment. "My mother used to say the same thing," he said, his voice soft. "She grew up with nothing. This foundation, it was her way of sending out invitations to the party." It was the first time he had spoken of his mother in such a personal way. Alara saw a flicker of vulnerability in his eyes, a crack in the reserved professional facade he usually maintained. In that moment, she saw not just her boss, the wealthy benefactor, but a man who was carrying his own grief, his own loneliness. Their relationship deepened through a series of small, quiet moments. He started offering her rides home, using the excuse that it was on his way, though she knew his penthouse was in the opposite direction. During those rides, they talked. She told him about her past, about Lily's father who had walked out when he learned she was pregnant, about the years of struggle that followed. She spoke without self-pity, stating the facts of her life with the same quiet dignity he had first admired. In return, he began to open up to her. He told her about his lonely childhood, raised by a father who was emotionally distant, more interested in his business empire than his own son. He confessed that after his mother's death, he had thrown himself into his work, building his inheritance into an even greater fortune, but finding little joy in it. The foundation was the only part of his life that felt meaningful, the only thing that connected him to his mother's memory. They were two people from vastly different worlds, yet they found common ground in their shared experiences of loss and their deep-seated desire to create a life of meaning and connection. He admired her resilience, her unwavering moral compass. She was drawn to the kindness and integrity that lay beneath his reserved exterior. They were healing each other, filling the empty spaces in each other's lives without even realizing it. One afternoon, Julian came to her apartment, saying he had something for Lily. He was holding a small, gift-wrapped box. When Lily opened it, she gasped. Inside was the snow globe from the department store window, the one with the tiny cabin and the graceful deer. Lily threw her arms around Julian's legs in a fierce hug. "Thank you," she squealed. "It's my forever house." Julian looked over Lily's head at Alara, and his eyes were filled with a warmth that had nothing to do with their professional relationship. In that moment, Alara knew that her feelings for him had grown into something deeper than gratitude, and she saw in his gaze that the feeling was mutual. A year passed. Winter had returned to the city, blanketing it in a fresh layer of clean, white snow. But this year, the cold held no menace for Alara. It was simply beautiful. She watched the snowflakes drift past the window of her warm, comfortable living room, a mug of hot chocolate cradled in her hands. Lily was on the floor, carefully arranging ornaments on a small Christmas tree. The snow globe had pride of place on the mantelpiece, a constant reminder of the night their lives had changed forever. The past year had been one of incredible transformation. Alara had excelled at her job, becoming an indispensable part of the foundation. She had found her voice, her confidence, and a profound sense of purpose. But the greatest change had been the blossoming of her relationship with Julian. Their friendship had slowly, naturally, deepened into love. He had become a regular presence in their lives, not as a benefactor, but as a partner, a friend, a cherished part of their small family. He took Lily to the park, he helped her with her homework, he read her bedtime stories. He loved her daughter as if she were his own. That evening, Julian was coming over for dinner. As Alara was setting the table, the doorbell rang. It was him, his cheeks flushed from the cold, a light dusting of snow on the shoulders of his dark wool coat. He smiled at her, a genuine, unguarded smile that still made her heart skip a beat. After they had put a very excited Lily to bed, they sat together on the sofa, the only light in the room coming from the twinkling lights on the Christmas tree. The city glittered outside the window, a sea of infinite possibilities. Julian took her hand, his touch gentle but firm. "Alara," he began, his voice serious, "a year ago, on a night just like this one, I was a different man. I was successful, I was wealthy, but I was empty. My life was a series of transactions. I had forgotten what it meant to simply give, to connect with another person without an agenda." He looked toward the mantelpiece, at the small glass sphere. "And then I saw you. You were standing in the cold, with every reason to be bitter, to be selfish. But you weren't. You gave away the last thing you had to help a stranger. In that one moment, you reminded me of what truly matters in this world. You reminded me of my mother. You showed me what character, what true grace really looks like." He turned back to her, his dark eyes intense and full of emotion. "This past year, getting to know you, getting to know Lily, it has been the greatest gift of my life. You've filled a void in me I didn't even know was there. You and Lily. You are my home." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. He opened it, and inside, a simple, elegant diamond ring glittered in the soft light of the tree. Alara's breath caught in her throat. "Alara Vance," he said, his voice thick with feeling. "You are the kindest, strongest, most incredible woman I have ever known. I love you. Will you marry me? Will you let me and Lily be your forever family?" Tears streamed down Alara's face, but this time they were tears of pure, unadulterated joy. She couldn't speak, so she just nodded, laughing through her tears. He slid the ring onto her finger, a perfect fit. He leaned in and kissed her, a kiss filled with a year of unspoken emotion, a promise of a future she had never dared to dream of. The final scene of their story was not one of grand gestures or opulent displays. It was a quiet moment a few weeks later, on Christmas morning. They were in a new house now, a beautiful but comfortable home that Julian had bought for them. A fire crackled in the hearth, casting a warm, golden glow over the room. Alara, Julian, and Lily were sitting on the floor together, surrounded by wrapping paper, their laughter filling the warm, safe space. Alara looked at Julian, her husband, and at Lily, her happy, carefree daughter. She saw the love that bound them together, a bond forged in an act of kindness on a cold winter's night. Her gaze drifted to the mantelpiece where the small snow globe sat, its tiny cabin nestled safely in the glittering snow. It was no longer just a symbol of a dream. It was a reflection of their reality. They had found their forever house. They had found their forever home, not in a place, but in each other. And in the quiet peace of that perfect morning, Alara knew, with a certainty that settled deep in her soul, that this was the magic she had been searching for all along.